Well, Senator Buckson, welcome
Thank you.
to Dover. Welcome
Thank
to
you.
the Delaware General Assembly. For those listening and watching who don't know, Senator Buckson is the newly elected senator from the 16th Senate District, right around the Camden, Wyoming, South Dover, North Milford, Magnolia, Frederica. Yeah.
Bowers.
Bowers, yeah. So really much of what you served when you were a member of the County Levy Court, right?
Yeah, well, so I got the benefit of a lot of the Levy Court districts out over top, and the rest of it I kind of know from growing up and being around the area. So it was good.
And so, and you grew up within the district, is that right?
Well, sort of, yeah. The 4th District, the Levy Court, actually, I was at the northern tip of it, representing the entire district. However, the remaining area that I kind of lived in was a lot of the remaining parts of the 16th District. So even though I wasn't commissioner for them, I actually was living in that area.
Right.
So that's what I'll tell you. So I did grow up. I went to Cesar Rodney High School, which is, I would consider to be a combination of other districts, but as well as the 16th District. So I went to school at the University of Delaware, taught school at Polytech for 30 years. So all of those things are, sort of combining to make up the district I now represent.
And I don't want to say despite the fact, but even though you were a member of the Levy Court, even if you were to take that away, you still have some upbringing in politics.
That's right.
Is that right?
Yeah, I've got a father that has a legacy around this place. His name David P. Buckson. He's got fame because he was lieutenant governor twice. He was attorney general twice of the state of Delaware. Lieutenant governor once, let me correct that. And he was governor for 19 days. It's a unique story, right? Because the sitting governor moved on to the Senate, and because of that, the lieutenant governor, my father, was moved up to governor, like I said, for all 19 days. And until the day he died, people still referred to him as governor. He got a kick out of it.
Hey. Well, that's all that matters, right?
That's
He
right.
had the title.
That's right.
And I'm sure he served pretty well, right?
Amen. Yeah. He's part of the reason I'm here because, he stayed in the fight a few times. He was not successful, but he tried twice to become governor. It just didn't work out.
Yeah, well, is what it is. So with all that said, so you have a wealth of experience within education, obviously the political background, both because of your family, but also, as mentioned earlier, you served over a decade in Levy Court. So bringing all that here to Dover, what do you hope to accomplish within, say, the first couple years of your term in office?
So I came here to make sure that the folks who put me here have a seat at the table, the decision-making table, whether it's in a committee or out there on the floor. I want to make sure that their thoughts and words are represented well. The good news is I align with them. So we line up, and so I'm going to present their ideas as if they're one telling me to say it. So what do I hope to accomplish? I hope to get the folks around here that have kind of been disconnected to that. They've been here a long time. To recognize that I'm speaking for a lot of folks that maybe they represent, they're not listening to anymore. Education is going to be a big one, right? I mean, we are losing it in education, and the fix doesn't come from here. The fix comes from inside the classroom and works its way up to here. Unfortunately, legislators look at it as we got to come in here and fix education, so we'll do it from here. We'll fix it here and apply it there. It's like generals in a war. You sit over in Washington, D.C. in a think tank area and you try and make field decisions. It don't work. It don't, because you're not asking the troops on the ground, and that's what we need to do in education. There's a whole lot of things, but really those two things jump out as some big ones. Follow the rule of law. Hey, let's follow the rule of law. Let's make sure that the things that we say that we the people should adhere to, that we also adhere to. I mean, we've seen that in the first 3 weeks that I was here. It's been amazing. It's been amazing.
Well, and you had a video that was posted on your Facebook page, your Senate Facebook page last week, in which you were really, I guess, lamenting the kind of the how should I word it? It's just how things have always been done, right?
Lamenting the BS.
So we had Senate Bill 29, which was heard in committee on that particular Wednesday, so a little over a week ago. Constituents and residents and folks with concerns about the bill were given only a minute to testify.
Yeah.
Who knows if they all were able to make their voice heard, and then less than an hour later, probably, I would say, it was brought to the floor for a vote. It didn't sit too well with you, did it?
It shouldn't. It shouldn't sit well with the people that I bring here, which are the people that elected me. Logical minds are going to tell you that's deliberate. That's done to create easy governing on a difficult bill. It's exactly how it was done. There is no way around it. The reality is the state of Delaware has a bond bill. That's a large spending bill. We do capital projects. It requires what I would consider to be a 3/4 vote. And if you don't like that because you won't have the votes, I guess now the play is you sneak it into a mini bond. The mini bond doesn't require the same votes. It requires a simple majority. So basically, it's an end around. It's bullcrap. We wouldn't tolerate it from the community. In fact, we're making laws that dictate what the school boards do, probably laws that the county does, but it's not good for the goose, good for the gander, because we're not doing it ourselves. If value is in public hearings, in public testimony, how can that be value if you have a committee meeting, invite them to speak, and then you don't hear what they said? You don't produce the document, the minutes, you don't allow the other elected officials to hear it, and then you call for a vote? And why don't you just be honest with the folks? Here's what you should do in that situation. This is a mini bond. We really don't care what you think. We're going to pass this anyway. How do you like those apples? That's really what was said.
Yeah, it was Senate Bill 35 that you're alluding to, the mini bond bill. Ordinarily, for those who are unaware, it's very typically uncontroversial stuff that's put in it. Some technical corrections, some shifting of money that's really already been budgeted just around, like nothing nefarious, but just it is what it is. It happens every year, it's typically within the first 2 or 3 weeks of the General Assembly, and it is. But there was language that was inserted into the bill that it's kind of complex, but long story short, they're trying a pilot program out in which they're wanting only union labor to be able to participate, bid on, and work on these state-funded projects, like a public project. Or if a private company that, say, isn't union wishes to do so, they would have to enter into a collective bargaining agreement. So we have heard throughout this entire week, and was it about 6:30, Thursday, January 26th, from many members of the Latino community, but also just in general, folks who aren't part of a union, saying, hey, look, this disenfranchises us, right? They weren't given the opportunity to discuss this in committee. So they've been communicating their concerns with us in the Republican caucus, the Democrat caucuses in both chambers, and it doesn't sound like the bill that passes is there. Well, long story short, there was a bunch of amendments that were thrown out there, right, that would have rectified this situation that those folks were saying was not going to be beneficial to them, but apparently those calls went ignored. I think that's fair to say.
They did go ignored, and they went ignored because the time on the clock expired, meaning the folks in charge of this place who expected this to go through streamline, they slipped it in, and then we the people, folks, actually showed up, said this is not good, it doesn't work, and it slowed the process down, but it ran into a delay because this is the last day of our session, and the mini bond needs to be passed. There's spending in there that really is going to be good and help some of the projects out in our communities. So they went up against the clock, and they did what they do because they're in control. They said, you know what? Forget it. We've heard your concerns. We'd like to fix your concerns, but we're not going to fix your concerns. We're going to go ahead and move it forward, and you'll just have to figure it out down the road. That's really what went down. It's amazing to me when you have a bill, a spending bill, and you add into it what I would call social engineering, right? Right or wrong, we would all agree, Republicans and Democrats alike all agreed when we were on the floor that we want to add language that diversifies opportunities and in fact, workforce. We want that. Do this one specific amendment and we're all on board. Nope. We're going to hijack it and force the union aspect into the game in order to produce a more diverse union. It's the interesting part of that. They want us to cure the union's problem for diversity. Well, I believe that the free market, evidenced by what we saw today, has quite a bit of diversity in it. You know, I don't know where you're coming from, but where I am, my district and further south, if you go on construction sites, you're going to see diversity. You just are, and that shouldn't be offensive to anybody. So I challenge the thought. I think I think what happened was obvious. Process fell apart because you didn't follow the procedures in place. It fell apart. But even though it fell apart, because a majority is in place, they were able to just say, screw it, and force a square peg through a round hole.
Well, I'm sure that's not the last time we'll be discussing even this topic. There may be some other ways that we can hopefully mitigate the damage that those individuals and companies and folks may experience. So it's definitely something for those of you listening and watching, something to keep an eye out on.
Amen.
But shifting, again, you're a freshman senator. Very rarely are freshman legislators placed on the very powerful Joint Finance Committee. Again, today, Thursday, 26th, Governor Carney gave his public budget presentation, what he has in his recommended budget. Not going to go too into it. Long story short, it's a 7.4% increase over the last year. Very targeted funding to one-time projects. Educators going to be getting a 9% raise in pay. I think state employees in general going to be getting about a 3% raise. And I think it was a little bit less than 98% of the funds have been actually allocated, meaning the remaining part's going to be put into a budget smoothing rainy day fund, which is something we have been advocating for.
Sure.
And we have to give credit where credit's due to Governor Carney. He's pretty conservative fiscally overall, at least, with how, compared to the rest of, I think, the mainstream Democratic Party, frankly.
All right.
But anyway, so you're going in Joint Finance Committee. What do you hope to, taking your experience that you had with budgets and levy court, what do you hope to insert into this process?
So 2 things, clarification. Ken Simpler, to Carney's credit.
Yeah.
To Carney's credit, good governing, Republican Democrat. He introduced it. Carney took it, even though Simpler was not in office anymore. Recognized good governing there and hijacked it, used it. I don't say hijacked in a negative way, and has it in place. And it's a very effective measure right now. I don't think folks listening right now would appreciate how important it now is. Regarding the budget and my work on the JFC, I in fact asked for it. I appreciate and respect leadership in giving it to me. I think it speaks to my desire to better understand the budget. As a county commissioner, I worked on budgets for, we always had JFC. All commissioners were a part of it. We didn't call it JFC. It wasn't the governor's budget. It was the county administrator's budget. We still had to go through the budget on separate nights and work through it to create a finished one. And, so I look forward to it. I got, an interest in making sure this. I look at budgets like this. I look at the state budget like I do a household budget. And you have X amount of dollars, and you have to decide first on the needs and how much are you going to spend on the needs. Now, in a year when we're flush with cash, and we are, focus on spending as much as you can on needs so that you don't need as much in the future. That's going to be the concern, because here's the other side of that, the wants. The wants too. Now, we've got money to spend on some wants, but we don't want to grow too many wants. I want people to stay with me now, okay? You want to go on that vacation and you got the money to do it, but you don't want to go big because you've also got to buy a new washer and dryer and put a roof on the house. So, you can go on vacation this time, you just don't want to go overboard. Same thing's going to happen with our budget this year and our new proposals, where we've got money, as you said, as the governor stated. We've got some good money. That's good news. But we've got to focus on the needs, go heavy on the needs. Look at those wants, those vacation ideas, maybe the new sneakers, buy a new car, whatever it might be that you don't really need, and decide how big do you want to go on that. Because you've got to recognize that in the not too distant future, maybe not this year's budget, definitely, or even next year's budget, but the one after that and the one after that I have deep concerns about. I have deep concerns, and we need to be prepared for that. So we don't grow our budget so much that when we're there, the only way to cure that budget, those out years, is to go to the constituents and say we need more money. That should not happen. If we budget-wise this year and next year, we don't need to go to our constituents, to the taxpayers, the ones that are paying the freight or the franchise tax or whatever tax, and say to them, you've got to bail us out. We're underwater right now. That'll be a big mistake.
Well, and to your point, I seem to recall it was last year, I think, right around this time. The comment was made, I believe it was by Secretary Geisenberg, about the question was asked about why are we having these large budget surpluses, and it was either him or Director Saran Cade, Director OMB, made the comment that the driving force behind these surpluses were our three most volatile tax revenues. And I think it was the realty transfer tax, I believe was one. Corporate tax is another one that's admittedly is escaping my mind.
Yeah.
But the word that I keyed in on was volatile, meaning it's good this year, and frankly, it's been pretty good the past 2 or 3 years. But what about next year, the year after that? And
Sure.
I believe they're already projecting next year to not be bad per se, but it's not going to be nearly as good as what we have right now.
Sure, I think you got the gross receipts tax in
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
You know, you said the corporate. There's other sheets tax is one that we used to make
Yeah.
a lot of money off of. Probably involves itself, but you know, my take on it and looking at what you're saying and being flush with cash, when you're bringing in more revenues than you need to run the budget, you got two options. You can find ways to spend it. Three options. You could save it, budget smoothing, or you can stop taxing the people so much, which is why I would support a personal income tax reduction. Certainly would. I think it's a fair way to say that the people of this state, working hard and through the policies that we've had, that we are, in essence, right now, overtaxing. We're drawing in too much in the way of finances, and so we're gonna balance it a little bit, you know. And we could definitely do that, and so that might be a way to look at it. I certainly would not want to get in a position though where we think it's a good idea to harm the corporate tax anymore. I certainly don't want to get to a position where we look at we got to save ourselves by raising the personal income tax or any one of those things. So, you know, look. I heard in the JFC today, they said, well, what we want to focus on is one-time spending. So you want to build a lot of construction and stuff. I don't disagree, because that way down the road, you maybe don't have as much capital costs if you get short on operational costs. So I don't necessarily mind that. But the reality is that through the work of reality, whatever you want to call it, the cost of an employee has gone up. It just has, whether you're in the private sector or the public sector. We're going to have to meet those costs in order to keep hiring people and attracting people. So that's going to be, we're going to have to spend some money on salaries. We just are. I don't have to like it. We are. In order to compete with the private sector, our government employees, we're going to have to look at salarying them up to make them more in line with what the private sector is attracting them to go to. Or we're going to be short, and then we're not going to function efficient. And then you're going to get where you are, which is delays in getting back on folks, whether it comes to I'm dealing with what now and trying to get folks in the family court to respond to an issue, maybe over at planning or whatever it might be. Yeah, you need to make sure we look at it. But then at the end, after that, focus the rest on one-time expenditures. You do. We've got a looming crisis, at least I've been identified as, when it comes to health care for our retirees. Well, the retirees we made a deal with, right? And that's real. But that doesn't excuse the fact that we've got a problem. So how do we fix it? Well, we're not going to balance it on the backs of retirees. I don't think that works. Maybe there's a blended approach. One of the approaches is we've got this money, and we allowed this deficit to occur and used money elsewhere and ignored the problem. Take some of the existing excess revenues that we have and throw a bigger lump sum at that problem of that deficit, that cost associated with being underfunded for retiree health care. So there's one way to help to lessen that underfunding is throw a big number at it.
And that was a can that was kicked down the road.
Absolutely.
For decades.
Yeah.
Which I believe, again, you acknowledged in your video last week. And it's been acknowledged by the administration during the presentations that we've received, right, on this crisis that you correctly noted. What do you think the best way out of that would be?
It's going to be a blended approach. Yep. It really is. The reality is healthcare costs have gone up significantly. I know the retirees, because I'm one, and I dealt with this at the county level with retirees, have a reasonable expectation that they signed a contract with the state. They made a deal with the state to, they'd accept lower salaries of such, right, and forego those for the benefits. And now they're here and they want their payback. They're not wrong with that. I get that. The issue becomes who could have acknowledged or understood how the costs associated with healthcare would escalate. So I would look for some sort of a grandfathering in. I think that's more than fair. I would look for something that says to the state, you kick this can down the road, so take a big significant amount of money and hammer on that deficit, okay? And then I would look for the current system to be revamped so that future retirees don't have to face this. It may mean that we have to revamp the cost share, but that's just what it takes to maintain a very positive, what I would consider to be a benefits package. The state has one. You know, the state has done a good job, like the counties have done, of salarying up, right? It used to be that the salary lagged behind the benefits. Now the salary is surpassed it, and that's a big thing. But in doing so, you can't have the benefits keep pace. You've got to have a blended approach. That's a challenging thought, but it certainly doesn't come with, this is on the retirees. We got to figure. I think the retirees will be on board. You've got to adequately and accurately show them that a change in the name of the insurance plan isn't a change in the game.
Right.
And that's what we're trying, not we, the folks at the state level are trying to say. Proof's in the pudding. Because right now, folks on the outside are saying that's not true. And the members of the retiree community have a right to be concerned. I'll offer another, maybe an a la carte plan. So there's a lot of options. We're just spitballing ideas. Yep. An a la carte plan of sorts that allows folks to keep that Cadillac plan, we'll call it, that plan they're used to, in some form of an a la carte, maybe, work out a deal with them. And the folks that don't need that plan, that are comfortable with switching, maybe they can. And maybe they can do that at a savings or something like that. It's complicated. We're not going to solve it in this, but there's options. The problem's real. Can't be on the backs of the retirees. I think there are options out there. Let's get to work.
Right on.
Mm-hmm.
As you would say, right on.
Right on. I will add this. We're here. This is 2 examples that I've faced in 2 weeks that are caused by a lack of transparency between government and the people they represent. The reason those retirees showed up in force and were so upset is because the government failed to adequately inform them of what they were doing. Proof's in the pudding. They showed up no different than what happened here tonight and last week. We failed to allow for those folks to have a clear understanding of what they're doing. And that exemplifies government should be difficult. It should be measured and paced. It should be successful, but measured, paced, and difficult, not speed of the night, which is what they're trying to do here.
Well, I couldn't agree more.
Amen. Amen.
Definitely on the same page with that. Well, Senator, again, has it taken you a long time to get used to that, by the way? Senator?
Yeah, a little bit. I enjoy it. I can't lie. I enjoy it. Humbles the pie you eat, so I don't think it gains me any access to anything I shouldn't get into. But, yeah, reminds me of the work I put in to get here.
Absolutely. Well, look, it's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Happy to have you on board.
Yeah.
Again, this is the first installment of the Second Floor podcast.
Yeah.
Also be video on our YouTube channel, Facebook. Be on the lookout for more of these over the course of the General Assembly and in the future. Senator, for those who want to follow you, Senator Eric Buckson on Facebook.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Got your newsletter. You can send me an email. My name's Matt Revel, to matthew.revel@Delaware.gov. I can get you hooked up with that. Mm-hmm. Go to our website on Legis.Delaware.gov. There's a link somewhere. I'll put it in the description of this. I can't think of it off the top of my head right away, but yeah, like you said, we're out there.
Yeah.
You can find us. So anyway, look, Senator Buckson, great first month. I appreciate it.
Enjoyed
Thanks
it, man.
for sitting down.
Peace.
Yep. See you.
Appreciate
Thank
you.
you.